Thank you. The first item is apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Karina Dostalova, Charles Edward Lord, Alderman Prem Goyal, and Deputy James Thompson.
Great, thank you. I'm not aware of any others. Thank you, Town Clerk.
Item 2 is members' declarations under the Code of Conduct. I'm not aware of any declarations.
Neither am I. Thank you, Town Clerk.
Item 3 is to agree the public minutes and non-public summary of the meeting held on the 8th of October 2025.
Are there any amendments? Seeing none, I take them as approved.
Item 4 is a report on the strategic branding review and consideration of placed brand.
Thank you very much. So just by way of introduction, you will recall that this was referred back to this committee pending some discussion about how the City of London brand would be used, and I think some very helpful work has been undergone by the team since then, which has been very helpful. I particularly want to, just before I ask Christy to start, I wanted to address the two recommendations that have been put before us. And one is to approve the proposals for Appendix 1, which I hope we will do. In terms of being asked to approve option 1, what I would like to propose actually is an amendment where we actually approve option 2, which is on the future of the City of London roundel, which you'll see on page 19. And that is to delete the roundel and adopt the visual identity that is consistent with the main City of London corporate brand. I think it's very important, and I spoke to the chair of the Culture, Heritage and Library Committee before this meeting to address this. I think rather than what we're trying to do with this proposal is really to invest in a brand that can be very powerful and really help drive the city forward with all of its many projects that it wants to undertake. And I think having separate brands that we need to invest a lot of money in will be difficult. What I think we do need to do is to broaden. And when we talk of brand, it's very important that we realize that that is not just a look and feel. It's not a font. It's not a logo. That is not the same thing as brand. It's what are we known for? And what I would like to do, and what I spoke to the chairman of Culture, Heritage and Library about, and I completely agree with, is that our brand needs to be more than just financial professional services. It needs to be about our cultural offering. It needs to be a lot broader. And I think that's something that's very important. And so as we, I hope, vote to adopt option 2 and to merge that in, it's actually the work that we do to make sure that we are known for, well, sport, for culture, for many other things, rather than just our promotion of financial and professional services. And I think that will be an important part of what our brand is going forward. But with that, let me turn to Christy and before I invite questions.
Chair, sorry, just for governance, you've moved an amendment.
Sorry.
So before anyone should second it, just to clarify the wording of the amendment. So instead of approving option 1, the chair has moved to amend the recommendations to approve option 2, which is to implement the proposals from the strategic branding review, and on the place brand, merge the City of London and One City channels, delete the roundel, and adopt a visual identity that is consistent with the main City of London corporate brand. Is this seconded?
Yes.
Yes.
Chair, you and I have discussed this outside the meeting, and we are, I think, firmly of one mind on this. You cannot have two identities in one organization. You cannot have a mixed match of brands that basically addresses different parts of the organization. We are working very hard, the chief executive and I, to reduce silos, to making sure that we have one team, one brand, one message. And when the roundel was introduced, it was introduced for the best of motives at the time. We were launching a new destination city. We, as we often do in this corporation, sadly, spend a lot of money with consultants telling us what that should look like and how it should happen. But of course, it takes no account of the more overall arching branding review that the corporation was engaging in, Chair. And as you said, quite rightly, we have to be one institution, one organization. And when you start to have more than one brand, you muddle, you mix, and frankly, you dilute the impact of your brand value. So I second your amendment to adopt option 2 very happily, because I believe that this is the time when it doesn't really matter what we spent on it. We spent it, it's gone, done, right? We have to go forward and do the right thing. And the right thing is to be one brand, one organisation. I so second.
So members, a motion has been put forward and seconded. Do members wish to debate the amendment? No? Okay.
Okay. Can I get indication of support for the amendment? Great. Thank you. Good. So before we come to questions on the main recommendations, Christy, can I ask you to talk to this?
Thank you, Chair. I think you've given a brilliant overview of where we are. I think there's been a lot of work put into this, and it's been a few years since kind of the original strategic branding review was brought forward. So we are really keen to kind of move to the next stage, really, which, just for clarification, I think there's some commentary that members had come with around the kind of appendix and some of the fonts used in the appendix. Just for clarity's sake, this was about placement of kind of how the City of London Corporation would be referenced, and the next stage would be to have a full kind of design style guide. And we would be, this is the main committee that we would be bringing updates back to on a regular basis. So my one ask would be, in terms of particular fonts or kind of really specificity, it's really about kind of the concept and the placement of the brand. And we are keen to move forward to the next stages as soon as possible. The other one was just, I know there was some discussion around the City of London, the City of London with the crest, and we have, and in some instances, that is the that particular logo is the best for some areas, and that would be determined based off of in discussion with the delegated authority, which is outlined in the paper. It's really about the best use in each instance and coming up with that. So that should exist and hopefully come through in the paper. I know some people mentioned the City of London kind of logo and crest, and so there should it is outlined in the paper that could still be utilized in the right instance. So just want to draw attention to that as well, because I think that was one key point that a member had in the previous when this got to court. So we're very happy to take any questions. A lot of work done by James, who's here, as well as Lisa. So yes, happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Obviously, I agree with this paper. I'm very supportive of it. My question is around protection, and this has come up at Income Generation as well, is how can we protect the use of this logo and branding? Because there are counterparties out there who will abuse it. They will steal it and mimic, and that's where we get some of the sort of issues arising. How can we protect this? Is there a sort of legal trademarking or something that we can do to this?
So it's almost as if I'd asked you to ask that question, even though I didn't. You raise an incredibly important point, Trevor. We're all incredibly frustrated by the way that this gets used, and I don't think we've had nearly enough teeth to enforce the use of our brand. I think it's very important that we police that, and I think it's important that we bring legal action against those who use and abuse our intellectual property. We've not really done that in the past. And it's good to be able to put on public record that we intend to do that in the future. So if you misuse our brand, you can expect to hear from our lawyers. Variations thereof. Yes.
Moving a little line here or there. We need to sort of protect this.
We're in active talk with the Remembrances Department on doing this. Deputy Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I mean, this is coming to full P&R on Thursday as the parent committee, and I honestly feel very, very strongly, as you just articulated brilliantly, that we've allowed our brand to be prostituted around London and further afield. I could take any one of you, as I said in call over, to any bar or pub or club or whatever in London today and show you the city's crest on something. It will be there. It will be there without any authority, any permission, any payment, any protection of our brand. It is utterly unacceptable. And we have ignored this, frankly. I've got to be blunt. We've ignored this as a corporation for many, many, many years. So absolutely welcome the authority with which you've said, as chair of this committee, this will be tackled, and it will be tackled in a way where we will take legal enforcement as necessary to ensure that the value of, frankly, without going over the top, one of the strongest brands in the world, I'd like to say, the City of London crest, the City of London brand, is protected, and it is not abused, and it is not usurped by those who would do so.
Thank you. I have to say, policy chairman pub crawls could be something for the income generation working group, but James Tunbridge.
Thank you, Chair. I thought you and the Deputy Chair and the other members might like to be aware of some information, because I have tried to protect our brand in the past. It was interesting that you mentioned talking to the Remembrances Department. Actually, the Controller's Department is the one you really need to talk to, not least because we actually have an engagement with European patent and trademark agents that have in the past obtained a trademark in relation to the City of London. I think they did that in the wrong way and didn't actually get us the protection that we deserve. We've also had deals and uses in the past that I have raised, and I have spotted, and I think you may recall, I think I've sent both of you copies of T-shirts with our coat of arms on overseas. So I fully endorse sort of paying attention, but I think that it needs a little bit of internal research to ensure that all members are fully informed of who's been doing what, because it's not quite right to say that we haven't actually invested and protected, but I suspect there's not a proper understanding of where. But the Controller's Department have in the past gone and sought trademark advice and sought UK only protection. And as we are a global brand, I thought that was a mistake, because for the same price we could have had pan-European. So I fully support what you're trying to do. I just think you need to make sure that you get information out of the Controller's Department on what is in place before you take further action. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on this particular issue?
Yeah, briefly, just a request that very initially we make this investigatory rather than going straight to legal with certain things. And the reason why, and I won't mention the particular case because we're in public, but there is a particular case of the logo being used, and where I was at a committee where people are saying this is outrageous, we need to stop this, we need to close it down. And it turns out that a Lord Mayor many years ago bestowed the logo by launching a particular product with the crest on, and very, very difficult situation if we then go and sue that company for use of the logo. So we need to tread a bit carefully initially on these things.
I think I think that's right. We need to look at this very, very well. But I would certainly be in favour of looking at a particularly egregious use, and by example, making clear our intention.
So sorry to just add to that. We need to make it very clear to office holders, including the mayoralty, that this is not something that I think just be given out as a gift.
Well, I think part of that would be development of a protocol coming through this committee, which will outline the approval process for the granting of the right to use the logo, which I think we have insufficient governance around at the moment. So that will come to here and on to PNR. Tim Hales.
So I think I know to what you're referring, but actually it's a broader problem than the example that you give, because if we as an organisation tolerate the use of our arms through custom and practice, you have de facto given consent. And that's one of the issues that is in play here, that there are people out there who have used it with effectively our consent and inaction. So I'm entirely with you on both on the point. I think there was a piece of work being done by comptrollers around the whole income gen piece on intellectual property, which was on our priority list. And I will say, as the sole in-house designer of the Mansion House collection, I have asserted my personal intellectual property rights over the design. Actually, I jest, because I've actually asked comptrollers whether that is in fact the case, and I've said I'd sign anything you want me to sign, and it's not. It's very clearly vested in the corporation. I'll also point out, whilst we're on the bash, the mayoralty point, that one of the pieces of work that I ensured happened when we regularised the relationship between the Lord Mayor's Show Limited and the corporation proposition was to transfer all of the intellectual property, brand and copyright to the corporation. So these things can be tidied up with enough effort and thought.
Great. Misremember.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, there has been work, as Mr. Tunbridge said, on this before. So we will certainly help alongside the controllers in trying to identify, well, in absolutely identifying what's been done so far in relation to this. We have trademarked various things in relation to the various brandings that have been used in the Guildhall or in the city for some time. And then there is, of course, the fact that our sort of the coat of arms is governed by heraldic law as well, which adds a sort of frisson to the discussion, and but sort of added protections, but also slightly more complicated. We don't really want to be going to the court of College of Arms in particular. No.
Well, it would be quite fun to take the first case in over 50 years to the College of Arms. James,
quick point of information, Chair, to assist. Heraldic arms are covered by the Trademark Act. You don't have to go to the college.
Thank you for that clarification. Christy, do you want to come back?
Just for clarity's sake, we will take away in action to bring back a further paper on this that has a cross-corporate approach, including remembrancers, comms, comptrollers. We've already started some discussions with Chamberlains as well and the commercial team about this. So just for clarity's sake, we will come back with a full paper on that point. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other aspect of the paper that people want to comment or ask questions on? No. If not, we'll move to. No, we've voted on the amendment.
So amendment's content to approve the report as amended.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you. Very helpful. Next, we come to party political conferences. Again, I'll ask Christy to speak on that, but I will, by the way, thank the great work of the branding team on this. So very much appreciated. I look forward to this. And by the way, I was at Hampstead Heath Committee earlier this week talking about how we fundraise for that, and actually having a branding which makes it clear that Hampstead Heath is a charity. Now that we've hired a fundraiser, is going to be so much more helpful with our fundraising efforts, and I suspect also for the Barbican and Guildhall School as well. On political party conferences, so this report summarises our party political conference program this year and makes recommendations for 2026. One of the things that was unfortunate about this year was an unclear timeline and decisions left to the last minute that sort of left members who had been hoping to be on particular delegations booking at slightly last minute when they weren't included, and that was not acceptable. And that criticism of that process was very fair. Before I go to Christy, let me also invite the Deputy Chair to speak about a couple of the proposals in the paper.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Chair, for that. Look, I first of all endorse what you said about, look, there were some errors, there were some teething troubles, let's call it that, in the first year of operation of a new policy, and I think we've recognised those. They won't be repeated again. I have absolute assurance from officers on that. So I don't think we need to kind of go back and heavily address them, because we know what they are and we know why they went wrong, and they won't go wrong again. And sometimes that's what we have to do. I do want to comment on two things which I took up with you, Chair, and indeed with Christy in the construction of this paper. Firstly, I want to just talk a little bit about reform, because reform, whether we like or loathe their views, it's irrelevant. We live in a democracy, and we are also, of course, a non-partisan organisation, and it's important, therefore, that we are balanced in our engagement across the political parties. Now, we are balanced in relation to what has historically been the three major parties: the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Democrats. I think we handle that, and I think our general sort of participation in those conferences has been at the right level. I did say to to Christie this year, past year just gone by, that I thought we ought to at least have a presence at the Reform Party conference, and Christie very kindly went and represented us. It was a pretty large and impressive conference, and if the polls are anywhere near to be believed, Reform will do well, potentially well in May next year. Now, it's a long road from party of protest to party of government, and nobody in this room 3 years or 4 years out, I think, would be bold enough to suggest that that's likely to be the conclusion. But I do think we need to engage with Reform. I have been to a dinner with Richard Tice on financial services, and I've listened to him in the same way as I would listen to any senior representative of any one of the parties in this country. I think we need to upgrade our attendance next year at the Reform Party conference to more than just an officer. We need a member presence. I think CPR should go to the Reform conference. I think it's necessary now. I think we've reached that point. And I guess depending upon how things pan out in May next year in the local elections, whether this committee revisit it and go, actually, we may need more than one member representative. We may need a couple of member representatives or whatever. But I do think it's important this committee, in a non-partisan fashion, is seen to accept and recognise the democratic engagement of all political parties and our role therein. That's the first point, Chair. The second point is on really related to the Liberal Democrats Party conference, and it's on the question of receptions versus dinners. We agreed this committee to do a reception last year in Bournemouth. I was very disappointed by the reception. Trouble is, with drinks receptions at party conferences, everybody's running them. So therefore, everybody kind of either goes or doesn't go, or doesn't feel any commitment to go because they've accepted umpteen invitations and they get to the ones they can get to. And frankly, we suffered on the back of that. We didn't have a great attendance at the Lib Dem Party conference reception. And I think we would be better to go back to where we were before and have a dinner, albeit a much smaller dinner than the dinner we host at the government's conference, which is 100 plus 120, or the Tory party opposition's conference, which is around about 80 odd, I think, from memory. You know, I'm looking at a dinner of maybe 40 or 50 people at the Lib Dem party conference. And I know we saved money by doing reception. I absolutely get that, but we had little or no impact by doing it. So it's, in a sense, it's wasted money. We'd be better to spend a little bit more, get specific invitees. We know historically that people who commit to coming to a dinner, accept an invitation to a dinner, are more likely to turn up than those who simply reply and say, I'll come to your reception. So those are the 2 points, thank you, Chair, with your indulgence, I wanted to make to the committee this afternoon.
Thank you very much. And just to back you up, I think the dinners at both the Conservative and Labour Party conference were very well attended, and I think very good engagement with people at both of those. Very pleasing. Christie, and then I'll come to questions.
Yes, thank you. So not too much to add, Chair. It's a review of last year and then also a forward look to next year. Fully acknowledge, and I think you both know, it was our first year of doing the member delegation process, where we're trying to ensure that we are cost effective in our approach, which means that we're taking a smaller delegation to Liberal, Democrat and Conservative, and we did have some errors in that, and we have the mitigation that we've done is outlined very clearly the timeline that we would stick to in the papers, so that going into June, pretty much by the end of May, the delegations will be set and everybody will be aware of the outcomes. So that is what we are proposing, but we're very open to commentary on that. And then on the Lib Dem reception versus dinner, again, we took that decision last year to change it, and officer opinion is very similar to the ones shared already. We did secure a politician, we had Daisy Cooper, but ultimately receptions are more difficult to get people to join because there are so many at conferences. And so we're very open to member commentary on that as well. But with thanks, we felt that it was quite an impactful program still overall, the entire conference season, with thanks to both Shelby Roberts and Ellie Varley, who delivered quite a lot of work on that. But ultimately very keen to hear any questions and how people think we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Shravan.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the Deputy Chair's comments on going to reform, for example. The thing I think we ought to do is, and I think almost to qualify our neutrality and nature of the corporation, is have a quantitative analysis of why we attend a particular party conference. So do we say they have X number of councillors across the country or X number of MPs in Parliament? I think a quantitative analysis is important rather than just, oh, we think these guys are making a lot of noise, we ought to go.
We do have that. So let me just address that because that does exist.
Yes, and also I didn't address reform actually in my intro. We did in the paper last year and in through committee, we took through 10 MPs in Parliament at any party triggers potential officer monitoring, and then 20 MPs in Parliament triggers potentially member delegation. But ultimately in the paper, there was also the option for there to be a business case presented why we feel that there should be additional attendance at something, which is what we activated last year for officer attendance at reform. Those are kind of the metrics that we had used last year. On reform as well, obviously we were monitoring polling. May elections will be kind of a key moment as well. So we could look at this at a kind of future committee once that has determined that is an option. But also we are speaking to our peers and other trade associations. When I did attend Reform Conference, there was a large commercial presence already at the Reform Conference, and indications are that will likely be the case for reform next year. Obviously, we're a little early in the cycle, but there are discussions about what form, and it would come back to this committee or for wider discussion, obviously with member approval. But would it make sense perhaps for us to work with other trade associations on a joint event altogether, which could be an option, and we're starting discussions on that too. But yes, in terms of the quantifiable, that was the option with a specific business case outlining why we feel it might be prudent to take a different approach with an individual conference.
Peter Dunphy.
Yeah, talking about the Liberal Democrat conference, it was disappointing the number of people who turned up. However, the reason we trialed that was because of the experience in 2024. The 2024 dinner, the speaker, who was an MP, came, spoke, and left. There was one other MP at the dinner, which was she was on my table. She came to the drinks and then left. So for the dinner, we had no MPs at the dinner. At the reception last year, although it was disappointing, we had, I believe, 5 MPs. So don't write it off on the basis that, you know, we didn't have as many people as we liked. The reason we didn't have as many people as we liked is because it started too late, it went on too long, and it was in the wrong place. If you're going to have a reception, it has to be, if it's in Bournemouth, it has to be in the Highcliffe. If it's in Brighton, it has to be in the Metropole of the Grand, if it's a reception. Although it might not seem far to walk, people just don't do it. People will not walk round to the Hilton for a reception. So don't rule that out on account of what happened in Bournemouth. And as I say, I spoke to 5 members of Parliament there. In 2024, I spoke to 1, and it was her explaining to me why she was leaving before the dinner started. So, you know, take that in consideration. If you do go for the dinner route, consider having it on the Sunday, not the Monday, because everything happens on a Monday at the Liberal Democrat Party Conference, absolutely everything. Start it at about 6:30, finish it at about 8:30 or 9. If you're going to run it through to 10:30, 11 o'clock, that's why you'll get no MPs. So if you do that again, you'll have no MPs.
Okay, I've got Helen Fenderman, then James Tunbridge, then Deborah Oliver. Helen.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Christy, for the report. 2 or 3 comments. I think, first of all, this might be too late, but do we have to make a decision about which conferences now and how many at each conference? Because I think that the May elections will be quite telling, and whether we need to have maybe an in principle decision now, but a final adjustment post May when we see what the party profile is looking like. I absolutely agree that reform, like or loathe, we have to have contacts and communicate, and we have to have some presence there. So I think that is a definite in my mind. But in saying that, what's the difference between reform and green at the moment? Green is really rising. And there are a number of defections, moving across to green, a number of people who are dissatisfied with the main parties and are looking to green, which is another reason for thinking about May for final numbers. And I think at this point, and I understand the financial constraints, and so I don't say this flippantly at all, but if we put the money to one side for a moment and remind ourselves of the purpose of City of London being at these conferences, would we come to a different conclusion to how we should populate and the things that we want to try and achieve in these conferences? And then look back at the money and see how far off we are on the affordability, because we may decide that for a little bit more, it's worth for that greater gain. And the final point is, I think that this report for me is very much more orientated around process and attendance as opposed to feedback from what we learned, what we saw as being priorities, and whether we're expecting another report, because those of us that attend put quite a lot of effort into making quite full reports back on what we've seen and what we've learned. And I think it's helpful to all of this committee to have a bit more of that information available. So if it's not this report, then it needs to be another report, which is perhaps just a short summary so that we all see what we've brought back from it. Thanks.
Great. James Tunbridge.
Thank you, Chair. Part of what I want to say flows off the back of what Helen said, because actually I'm rather disappointed in this paper. I asked a very specific question when we last met, whether or not we would actually get feedback and review of how we did it, which members went, why were they picked, what are we looking for? That there's nothing in the paper to tell us how. Even all we've really heard is the sort of the oral observation that things didn't work smoothly, things are a bit late, and I think that is an important point to pick up. But there's nothing in here to tell us. The closest we get is page 37 of the report, paragraph sort of 31, 32. But we don't really know who was picked, why they were picked, why they thought they were good, what we're asking and expecting. And I think we need that, because if we've gone to this system of expressions of interest and trying to choose the right people, round pegs, round holes, we've got to understand that. Otherwise, we don't really know whether we're making the right calls. So as I asked for that, and it's not here, I'm disappointed. And that brings me to the key point where I would really like some feedback. What are we meant to do with bold bullet point 4 on page 32? Because under the recommendations, there's only one there are two that are clear approvals, so they're proper requests. But the third one, which is the penultimate, says consider the expression of interest process for member delegation travelling to party conference. Now, that's what my question is really all about. I thought we were going to get some feedback. We've done it first. How have we decided? What are the criteria? What are we looking for? Did it work? What should we adjust in terms of how we choose members and what we expect of them? And none of that's there, Chairman. So I don't know what we're meant to do when it says consider the expression of interest, because all we really have is the timetable. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I think three questions, if I may, and hopefully that they're brief. I think the first one is really about, what are we going to the party conferences for? And we do say that we're trying to have engagement around strategic issues. So I think the first question is really how we pin down what are the strategic issues and what do we actually want from the engagement, so that we've got a bit more, so that we know the impact and the outcomes that we're after. And the second question is kind of related to that, and I know it'll be close to the chairman's heart, but issues like the discussions earlier today about the possible impacts on the size of police forces. Do we think about other parts of the City of London Corporation, like should we be factoring in that sort of thing to next, the current year's plan? And the third question is a bit of a sort of an esoteric one in a way, is you know, are party conferences still as important as they used to be? Because you just sort of hear that maybe they aren't as influential as they were in the past. But that's a bit more of a, kick your shoes off round a sort of chat thing. I'll just plant it. Thank you.
It's a very good question, which I'm going to let Christy answer in a second. Emily.
It was only to make a point, Mr. Chairman, that I think I made before, which actually follows on from Deborah's point about, there are other elements of the city corporation, things that we care about that we talked about earlier in the context of branding. It would be nice to see how those different elements of the corporation might be brought into some of our party conference programme, because there are many things that happen at party conferences, the UK Creative Pavilion, etc., that would have been very nice. That one could argue it's a great strategic opportunity for us to show off not only clearly to the sort of political people there, but actually the other people that are at the party conferences who are also important stakeholders for us, and to utilise that opportunity. I think that's a great, and goes to the point that I was making earlier about brand and what are we known for, and particularly I'm sure you're thinking of the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, but I think that's a great opportunity and a good point. I'll ask. Okay, sorry, Deputy Chair, go on.
Look, very briefly, I just wanted to agree with both what Helen said and Deborah said, in the sense that I think this is premature to make final decisions today on attendance at party conferences in 2026. I think we do need to look at May's results. I think we need to see and for me, I don't actually think the thresholds we've got are actually appropriate, 20 MPs, 10 MPs. It's what's happening. It's the sense of what's happening in a party political movement. And it could be in local government. It doesn't have to be in national government. So I think we need to look at what comes out of May as a committee, and then we make the decisions. It won't be too late to make the decisions then. We should make the decisions then. This is way too premature to be doing that. And to Deborah's point about, for example, the announcement of the Home Secretary today on policing and the merging of police forces. I mean, we are going to be having, because this isn't going to happen in this Parliament, I suspect, ultimately, time-wise, but we are going to need a major, major campaign for the City Corporation to preserve our City of London police force. And meetings, I've already convened a meeting today between all the interested parties to drive this forward. We will want to use the party conferences, all of the party conferences, but of course the government's party conference, to ensure that our message on policing and the rationale behind why we need to keep the City of London Police, not least for economic crime and fraud, is loud and clear. Now, we've been under attack before. We've survived once before, but this time the odds are much more stacked against us, because there are a number of senior chief police officers, commissioners, including the Met Police Commissioner, who is going to be very, very vocal on wanting this merger. So I think we've got to use the party conferences, Deborah. I 100% agree with you, to actually campaign. To be blunt, let's use the word campaign as a city corporation around those values and those institutions and the rationale for them that we believe in.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to address this exact point. I thought Helen also made a very good point. I think that actually the recommendations we're being asked to approve are sufficiently broad to enable us to do some tinkering after the May elections. I don't get the sense that we wouldn't do an event at Liberal Democrat Conference. I don't get a sense that we wouldn't do one at the official opposition, or indeed at the party of government. We're being asked to approve member and officer attendance at Reform. I think maybe the one thing would be to perhaps we could, Town Clerk, have an amendment on the making a decision about particularly the Green Conference after the May elections. But I think we can approve, mainly because I want to get the expressions of interest for the party conferences to have a more structured sort of timeline. And I think that still probably makes sense, and we can do that. But I think we would not make final decisions until after May. And so perhaps we would let that sort of. Well, I think we've got by end of May notifying successful applicants, but I think we would probably delay the assessment panel until after the May elections. But anyway, with all of that, Christy, would you want to respond to all of that?
I can come back, and I think all of it's really, really helpful and fair comments. On the, I think Peter Dunphy's a lot of really good insights there around reception and dinner, which we can take away and consider. And again, we've left it open in the paper to decide on that additional event. The one thing I would say is the timing of this committee sometimes makes it difficult, but actually we have another committee in January. So I think that's actually okay timing for to bring back more detail. And in answer to Helen's point about do we need to make a decision now, I agree with what the chair was saying. I think the timeline can be looked at and we can still do quite a lot of that work. But then final decisions can likely be taken after May elections. I think the main thing that we want to make sure that we do is try to secure early bird pricing on the passes, to be quite frankly, because that is what adds cost as well. So we'll keep an eye on the early bird pricing. It won't have been released yet, and the timing, and make sure that that all lines up. And then on the points around, which I think both Helen Fentiman and James Tunbridge had mentioned around process, that this focused on process and attendance and as opposed to feedback and analysis. We can come back to the January committee. We definitely have all that feedback, which we've collated and we've looked at internally, and it is quite helpful. And we can give further details as well about some of the thought process around what would potential members be selected for, and I think we can bring that back to January committee, a wider paper on the actual expression of interest kind of process, but also more feedback on that. Deborah Oliver, on the 3 questions. So what are we going for and kind of what are the strategic issues? So we do have a process that we follow. It's usually in January as officers that we kick off a cross corporate discussion about what the sometimes it's a little bit of a looking into a crystal ball, because obviously you're starting to do that at the beginning of the year, and we really need to sign our partnerships usually with our fringe partners by Easter timeline if you want to kind of secure good partners, and you're trying to match make with what policy areas they might be strong in. But ultimately we start that process cross corporate. It's not focused on one, so we're going out to all teams looking at what are your key priorities for the year ahead, and we do an analysis of that. So for instance, we did a culture roundtable 2 years ago. That was one that we did. And while our fringe events this year focused on kind of economic growth and some of the FPS priorities, we did aim to place people on other panels. So I believe Jason was on a panel around policing, and Tice also was he was due to represent, but unfortunately wasn't able to attend conference in the end. But so that is usually compiled into kind of a memo with some officer recommendations. And so we can put a little bit more in how that process happens, but it's definitely just to assure people, it's definitely a cross corporate approach. We don't kind of just focus in on one area, and I would expect with kind of policing and that would be considered for next year. Are they as important as they used to be? I do, the officer recommendation is still that we have a presence at political party conferences. They are a key area where we can get our messaging across on core areas. But I'm sure that there would be a lot of varying opinions on if they're as important. I think and we've already kind of discussed this in previous committees, I think we want to make sure it's value for money, and that we're kind of making sure that we're optimizing for the costs that we put in, that we're optimizing all the opportunities, and that's really where the team's current mindset is. And then on branding, very happy to look at that and how it can be brought into our branding. Like I said, we do try to diversify out. The team is small, and so how much we can really utilize full members. I mean, we deliver a full program for the policy chairman, but this year we did try to kind of add and place people at other events as well, and we can look at enhancing that for the next year as well.
I think the point really, Christy, just on that is, how can we highlight the Barbican, the Guildhall School, and City of London Police, and all the other elements of the corporation at Party Conference, and it's something that would be good. So, okay, I don't want to have endless. Hold on, I don't want to have endless comebacks. People have had their say. I know the policy chairman wants to speak on something that's not been discussed yet. So
yeah, it's very quick and very brief. It's on the final bullet point of the recommendations in relation to the business day passes, because as a CPR, I've now attended the business days for 2 years running of all 3 party conferences. They're not cheap, right? These business day passes are expensive, and I've decided, or recommend to you to decide, rather, I should say, that in terms of ROI and value for money, to be blunt, really, there's only one business day pass that's worth us investing what are, 4 figures plus several times over in, and that is the party of government. And I say that because at the Labour Party business day, preliminary party conference business day, the access to ministers, the closeness of that access and the engagement was of a very, very professional and high level and high quality. Contrast that, if you will, with the Tories conference, where there were just over 400 people attending the opening session of the business day. It was embarrassingly low, and we were paying a considerable amount of money to be there. And in the case of the Liberal Democrats, and no disrespect to the Liberal Democrats, it was a greatly organised business day and reception, etc., in the evening. But if I actually look at what we gained out of it, I could gain that out of just literally, as I can do, talk to Ed Davey or Daisy Cooper at events without spending thousands of pounds of our money, promoting, which is what, let's face it, is sponsorship for the party conferences. It's for the party, and I think we need to be more cautious about our expenditure in this area of business passes. So the recommendation that I've suggested to you, Chair, and to Christie, is that we only do this for the party of government.
Good, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Brief responses to Christie from Helen and James.
The only point I want to make really is that, again, this is and the fringes are focused on FPS. And actually, at the Labour Party conference and the Conservative conference, I was completely immersed in housing. Housing was on everybody's lips, and we didn't anticipate or we didn't think about things other than FPS. And I think that we have got some potential to make capital gain in those conversations as well. And I think we should think about some of the non-FPS areas for next year's fringe events.
Very, very helpful. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick, just to avoid me being disappointed at the next meeting. What I'm looking for is I want to know who went for the corporation, why we picked them, what we asked of them, and what did they report and achieve. That's what I'm trying to understand, to make sure we made a useful endeavour and we actually got something back, because that I thought was the whole purpose. But if we don't know who went, what we asked them to do, and whether they achieved it,
understood.
We can't judge.
Got it. Good. Thank you very much. Good. So, Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. So I think there's a suggestion that we need to slightly amend the recommendations in the report. I spoke to the Chair briefly. What I suggest is that we, if members can, a final bullet points, just to note that I wrote it down. That members instruct officers to return to the committees with final recommendations after the May local elections.
Good. And the panel assessments be delayed until after the May elections as well. It's part of the timeline. Good. Is everyone happy with those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Town Clerk.
Thank you. So item 6 is the square mile sports strategy.
Great. Thank you very much. And very much looking forward to this, not least for the potential for income generation, which has been identified in the report. Sam, let me throw this exciting paper.
Thank you, Chair. Right, the report is an update on delivering the city's sports strategy and also looks ahead to priorities for phase 2. It was considered by the sports sounding boards, which a number of members here are on Friday, and endorsed. And funding for next year has now been agreed, which is good news. But as you mentioned, the important part is income generation going forward. This will need some time to work out what's possible. Obvious things to me are things like event sponsorship, facility naming rights, assuming we acquire some of the facilities that are mentioned in the report, things like the skate park, partnership work, obviously, with the various organisations we work with on sport, such as London Marathon events take place in the city, and then also charging for facility usage. This could be through things like paddle facilities. We're looking at potential locations in the city for that. And then that's probably it at the moment, but we will have to work out a a more robust business case going forward, and that will have to come back to this committee by the end of next year. And the only other thing to mention is that whilst there's no significant changes being proposed in terms of governance, one of the suggestions which the sounding board supported on Friday is around ensuring that all significant sports initiatives, events taking place across the organisation, and that includes our open spaces, are brought to the sounding board to be consulted on. So it isn't necessarily that they have any kind of oversight or approval, but they are consulted on these initiatives. So other than that, this report goes on to Policy and Resources Committee tomorrow for hopefully final approval.
Great, thank you very much. And just before I invite questions on this, I think we do such fantastic work on sport, and we perhaps it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. I think at a future meeting next year, I'd just like to flag and plant the seed in the minds of members of this committee that we should consider adding sport to the name of this committee. I think in acknowledgement of the significant work that we're doing, but perhaps we should have an income target, Sam, for us to do that. But I think that would be a suitable recognition for sometime next year. But Helen.
Thanks. And I did have the opportunity to comment on this at the Sports Sounding Board. And the first thing to say is that I think it is really helpful to see how much has actually been happening, because there is a lot that's gone on in a relatively short space of time. The questions I had then and now are about the funding. I may have misremembered this completely, but I thought I recalled that when the sport money was first agreed, that there was an intention that it would in time become self-funding. And I think Sam couldn't remember that, so we weren't clear about whether my memory or Sam's memory was correct, but I'm pretty sure we did talk about it being self-funding. In which case, then I think we need to be clear about whether we still intend for that to be the case, and the timeline by which, through the income generating activities, of when we expect that might happen. And partly my rationale for that was thinking that in the report I get confused about, because we use the term transformation fund and then we talk about transition fund. I'm assuming that's one and the same thing. It's just a typo. But in my mind, whether it's in transformation fund or it's in transition, it's not appropriate to use that long term. We either agree that it's core business and it's funded appropriately, or it's self-generating, and we need to understand when we might expect that to happen.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair, very much indeed. Well, let me respond, if I may, to Helen's comments, because I don't think we are ever going to be in a situation where sport per se is entirely self-funding. And I think we need to be very honest about that and recognise that, right? We have to make a political decision, which I know my view on, which is that, sport has a soft power attached to it. We're never going to spend a fortune on sport in the corporation, but it does have a place and it does have a power, and it should therefore be in the core budget. Now, yes, there should be income raised, and we should absolutely make it clear to Sam that we expect him in the coming year to produce what he can in the way of revenue. I have no idea what quantum I'm talking about, but I do think that it is unfair to take money from transformation for 1 year and expect people to not know whether their jobs are there at the end of the year or not know whether or not the corporation remains wholly committed to sport as a concept or not. I believe we should be committed to sport, but I believe we should be committed to it in a sensible, measured way, not think that it's a cash cow that we can actually either make a huge amount from, nor necessarily spend a huge amount on. But it does have a value. And I've been to a lot of supported sports things that Sam's department has organised, and we punch above our weight, actually. It's amazing to me that the City of London, relatively, small geographical area, perhaps not naturally associated with sport in that sense, internationally really is recognised as a convening power and a force for good in the area of sport. So I think to throw it out and to say, well, it's not what we're going to do, I personally think would be wrong. But I think it does need to be measured. My briefing notes say, you may wish to pay tribute to the lead member for sport, Charles Edward Lord. P.S. This is written by Charles Edward Lord. But I, of course, do pay tribute to the lead member for sport. But in so doing, I make the point that under my policy leads policy of engaging members in specific areas, I think there needs to be a limitation on time that people should serve in these roles. And I'm intending to bring forward proposals that limit people to 3 years in a policy lead role, because I don't think it's right that people should go on and on and on forever in something just because they like doing it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Deborah Oliver.
I think the Deputy Chair just stole my thunder. I was going to just to congratulate both Sam and Deputy Lord on both the approach by sort of tackling the strategy first before coming up with all the wonderful ideas, but just with such limited resources. I think Deputy Lord has really championed this and has had excellent support from Sam. So I just wanted to say congratulations to both.
Yeah.
So apologies for repeating you.
Good. I'm sure we all would agree with that. Caroline Haynes.
Thank you. It was just to go back to the income generation and the funding. I think second and third phase is much more complicated than where we've been at so far, because with the Natural Environment Charity Review, we're dealing with individual charities that will be all be generating even income separately. That's difficult to say. And yet there are some cross-cutting themes like sport that go right across the use of facilities. When we're dealing with the city and city gardens, city plazas and so on, it's a much more direct line of management, and we have different charging and different access policies and so on. So I think this will prove to be quite complicated. Effectively, Sam Edward will be delivering in partnerships. So partnerships across the operating and management teams of the spaces that we have, wherever they happen to be. And that does give a complexity, which means that, like the Natural Environment Charity Review, not everything can be self-generating in terms of funding. Yeah. There will need to be some sort of core grant, which will give us stability to what can be planned for in 3 or 5 years hence. So to get a World Cup of anything, for example, you have to start 7 years in advance. So you have to be absolutely sure that that can be underwritten.
And I think your point about working more closely together, particularly between open spaces and sport, is very well made. I made the point in call over that there was an absolutely bonkers proposal some years ago to have a concrete cricket pitch on the main square at various Hampstead, Heath and Highgate Wood. And had we had the intervention of sensible people from sport, such silly ideas might have been killed before time, effort, money, and debate were wasted on it. But I think that stronger working relationship will be very beneficial. So it's well made. Tim Hales.
So look, can I first agree with Chris that this is never going to be entirely self-funding. I think we need to be realistic about that. It's the same with a number of other things we do from a soft power point of view, including some of our headline cultural offerings, not thinking of anything in particular. I think where I have a bit of an issue, and this is not a criticism of Sam, is this issue of competence, capacity and partnerships. And I've said it about income generation in other contexts, and I'm going to say it here again, right? As an organisation, we often don't have the skill set amongst officers to do this work properly. And I can see reference to an external consultancy here. And the more I see this, the more I think actually we're not set up organisationally to do this properly. We should be partnering and engaging people that have the marketing expertise and the actual technical competence to do this properly. And a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, but not entirely tongue-in-cheek, partnerships. And this goes to the silo issue, and it partly touches on what Caroline said about different organisational footprint and different cover. There's far too much still in this organisation of what's in it for me. So, for example, and I'll talk to Mansion House Collection because that's something we've just done recently. When we are cross-linking on that website into other areas of Corp, so that people can go to other sites to see other things. And the reaction we get, actually, without naming anyone in particular, but I have a list, when you go and say, well, how about some reciprocity, is, well, no, actually, not going to partner with you unless we get revenue share on, right? I mean, this mindset is a cultural problem. And so, all power to Sam as head of sport, but, good luck with the partnership bit, because my experience, even as an elected member, is pretty mixed on that one. So look, the soundbite is, I'm all for what I'm reading. I'm all for the encouragement of internal income generation, but I still feel that we're sometimes setting up our offices to fail because they don't have the skill set and they don't have the resource to deliver on it. And I think the income generation working group probably is the right place to have this conversation again, because we have to do something about it.
And indeed, Sam and I have had that conversation already, that we need to plug sport more into the income generation working group as well. Sam, do you want to come back on any of that?
I mean, from my perspective, the transformation fund is really useful because it gets me through next year. But from my perspective, I think actually at the sounding board, I was never under the impression that this was going to be self-funding. It was my expectation that there would be a core budget eventually that would cover the basic provision for a sport team, which is me and 2 members of staff. One delivers helps me on the sport strategy, and the other person delivers the community sport program. From my perspective, it's very difficult if we're working on the basis of funding each year. It's very difficult for me to plan ahead, is one thing. And it also, as Chris mentioned, it doesn't give my team a lot of reassurance about where they stand within their jobs. So, but at the same time, I have to, I'm quite ambitious about what can be done around income generation. And I think the key to it is facilities. And that's why, for me, the key relationship will be working with Environment Department on potential facility spaces within the city that could be used for sport, that could then open themselves up for partnerships, for sponsorship, for naming rights, for ticket or access for those facilities. That for me is the key area. So yeah, I think that sort of answered the question, but it aligned with what everybody's seen. And I'm also already speaking to the income generation team in the Chamberlain's department, and will, I'm sure, be bringing something to the income generation working party fairly soon.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Good.
Let me just come back on that point. So the question, and we need to have this conversation, income gen, right? Where does the money go, and who gets the credit for it? Because you could be out there helping another department generate revenue, quotes unquotes, under the label of sport, but they pocket the money and they pocket the benefit, and there's no recognition around this budget and your program. And this silo stuff and this issue of, it's not just about where the money ends up, it's about who gets the recognition and the acknowledgement for putting the work in to do it. It's endemic across our organisation.
I don't see why there's any reason why, if money's raised for Hampstead Heath, that can't be acknowledged as part of the reporting process here. Yeah, good. Are we happy to approve the report? Thank you very much, Town Clerk.
Thank you. Item 7 is the Corporate Communications and Engagements Update Report.
So this is our regular report that we receive. I'm particularly pleased to note that it will be the last report in this particular iteration. This is a sort of a laundry list of all the wonderful things that members of the comms team have done. And I'm sure we're all very grateful to be able to read it. But I'm sure there are better ways that we can report activity and look forward. But with that, perhaps Christy, I'll hand over to you to introduce the last report.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, just to be clear, we are going to attempt to move away from one kind of behemoth update report that pulls a lot of teams into one, just because it doesn't seem the best way to have it organized, and we'll take that away and come back with what works. But you've already heard quite a lot from me. So actually the relevant teams are going to run through. Annex A is about corporate affairs. It outlines some of the key areas that we have worked on since the last committee, including some strategic comms work that we have been doing as a team, overall political engagement, including quite a significant amount of work on the representation for the autumn budget, as well as work around the launch of the OFI Financial Services Investment Hub work. It talks a bit about party conferences, although obviously there was a more comprehensive paper on that, as well as a list of some of the other areas, including Pan-London engagement, continuing engagement with our external partners. We are always looking at different ways that we can maximize the use of our corporate partnerships, although there is an ongoing piece of work cross-corporate wide on memberships and subscriptions that will come to a future both Comms and Corporate Affairs Subcommittee, but a Policy and Resources Committee. And then we've been working to make sure that we've got that diversification across the political spectrum, and ensuring that we secure things, again, like the Fabians Conference, the Center for Policy Studies Conference, again, making sure we maintain that balance. We also have worked with some newer partners, so the British American Project Gala, which I believe some Comms and Corporate Affairs subcommittee members were able to attend, which is helpful. And then just a bit on a forward look as well. So happy to take any questions. Annex B will be covered by Mark Gettleston. So we can either do all of the intros.
Let's do all the intros.
Yeah, okay. So if we go ahead and do all of the intros and the relevant members know their areas to cover. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So this has been a very busy period, as is highlighted in the report. More than 1,000 individuals, for example, attended City Belonging Project events and activities this autumn. And the overall project hit over 5,000 sign-ups across the square mile. And we are less than 3 years since it began. On the topic of partnerships, as it was just mentioned, working closely with the Remembrances team, we are being increasingly successful at forging corporate partnerships around events, in particular the recent Black History Month event, where we had 12 paying partners in relation to that event, and brought 300 people to Guildhall on a Friday night. And I know a lot of work has gone on at this organisation in relation to Black history, some of which is about confronting our past. But through this event, we were actually successful in celebrating our communities and celebrating our future. Members will have received the provisional ward list in terms of ward list registration. Again, it will have with the final number is not finalised and released until mid-February. The ward list registration will be finalised on 16th of December. Again, one of the challenges, which has been a challenge time and again, is actually engaging carefully with more than 5,000 workplaces on their registrations, and we hope that for next year will be the first where we have a CRM that actually links together the data that we have across the organisation with our electoral registration data, so we can see where we do and do not have relationships. But again, this is about forging long-term partnerships with all of our occupiers about everything we're interested in, not just registration. Even even the next week in the run up to Christmas will be very busy. There will be a City Question Time event on Monday with a festive event afterwards. And more broadly, we're working closely with the policy lead for resident engagement, especially around aligning communities and stakeholder management across teams and removing organisational silos. Then the next day, there is a Hanukkah event with the Board of Deputies, run again by the Remembrances Department. And our Jewish community engagement during this period has actually been exceptional. In the wake of the Yom Kippur synagogue attack and the Thanksgiving service that the Lady Mayor attended at Bevis Marks, which and I want to pay tribute to Tenshi Lau who came to take the photographs from our digital team, was the best piece of LinkedIn content I have ever seen. It had an over 50% engagement rate, which is 5% is usually considered good. So yes, very busy period. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to start by introducing John Laycock, who is in the room with us. He joined 3 weeks ago as our new interim director of media. So he is getting his feet under the table and obviously supporting on a number of pieces of work. So I will just pick out a few highlights. Particularly one that was outside of the reporting period. As you can see, we have put a report on the Lady Mayor's show. It was extraordinarily successful. Some amazing achievements through coverage, both before and after the event. Also need to give a shout out to our own chairman, who featured in the ITV London coverage. He was grabbed during the parade. But as you can see, overall, our you were literally the audience reach is increasing month on month. Our digital impressions are growing hugely, and so that's really helping to drive brand awareness of the city. Also, many of you, well, I think most of you would have been at the 2 banquets last week. So again, that was a huge media team and comms operation, hugely successful, and working on a strategic pooled media strategy. We delivered. There was around 900 media mentions to date, particularly for the Lady Mayor's banquet. So very successful. Just to pull out a few other highlights. So very good engagement on our work on the budget, which the policy chairman led for us as well, and also secured great coverage for Sterling 20 earlier in the year. And then the other thing just to mention on media is we've obviously been running the consultation into the Hampstead Heath bathing ponds access arrangements. That's now concluded, but that did generate a lot of interest, particularly at the beginning, and again, led by our policy chairman. And just to say that things that are performing very well for us as well are our freedoms. We've been very fortunate to have some incredibly high profile freedoms recently. Barry Hearn, Robert Elms, Kate Blanchett, Ray Winston this evening, and we have Frank Bruno next week. And then I think just to kind of pull out a few stats on our social media and digital activity. So you can see from there, our engagement is up 49%. We have over 5,000 new followers across our channels. But more importantly, we are taking a much more strategic approach with a stronger strategy for all of our channels, looking at the content quality. So we have invested in some new equipment, which has really helped to improve the quality of the content that we can pull together, and also skills and training across the team. So we are upskilling more members of the communications team to support that.
You?
I believe the next one is digital state review.
So is that, sorry, I think I'm doing the digital estate paper.
There isn't. It's
This is it. Okay.
yeah. Apologies for the confusion, but it's embedded in the paper. If in the future these would be broken out, Mark.
Apologies, Chair, for my confusion. The as members will be aware, the Digital Estate Review was funded through the Transformation Fund earlier in the year. It has been a key piece of feedback throughout my almost 5 years at this organisation that our digital estate, in particular our websites and social channels, are not where they should be. This is a consequence of never actually having a digital communication strategy and allowing individual departments and teams to create their own digital content independently, rather than actually looking at what our audience is, what our service users need holistically. This report sets out where we are in that process. An appointment has been appointment of a really incredible specialist agency has been made. One of the key things that we will be doing as part of this process is to reach out to different parts of the organisation, with or without their own independent digital presence, to find out exactly what they want from it, and to ensure that whatever we want to create in the future actually services that need and bring things together. In the long run, this will not only remove certain costs of providing independent services, but it will also mean that we can be more flexible as an organisation. That when we need new initiatives, such as the need to create when we needed to create Destination City and so on, that we don't need to create a wholly new digital product. We can actually have a scalable platform that we can roll out. And the report also sets out governance around this, but we really want to put our audiences in the driving seat for the first time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And internal comms.
So just a few highlights from this. The team is very much going from strength to strength. There is a lot of engagement and comms going on across the organisation. So just to pick out, we had our most recent Town Clerk live event at Mansion House in November, which was focused on our people strategy, Ambition 25, but also we talked about FPS and the work that the organisation does on that. Over 1,000 colleagues were there in person and online, which was fantastic. And we had the Mansion House collection for sale as well, Alderman Hales. So that was there. But I think what we can see from that is, in terms of sentiment, it was 70% neutral, complimentary or positive. So, we are getting very good feedback from the organisation. And then the other thing just to pull out is there has been a lot of off-site visits, so going outside of Guildhall and visiting a number of colleagues and teams across the organisation, including Epping Forest, the other open spaces, the markets, reception centre, to talk about the HR transformation journey, but Ambition 25, and just to ensure that we are going to where our colleagues are, as obviously they're not all able to access Guildhall or even online events. So they have been very successful. There are more of those planned.
Wonderful, thank you. So a lot in that report. Just a few things from me. First of all, is to welcome John to the team. Very good to have you with us. I agree with the sentiment about the fantastic coverage around, particularly the first month of the Lady Mayor. It seems that news is everywhere, and I think if you live in London, you can't have failed to have missed it. Some really, a great example of how a few simple key messages repeated often gets great results. And I think that's fantastic. I was incredibly proud, I have to say, to hear the President of Germany talk about the City Belonging Project in his speech. I had a little frisson of pride, and just to think, an initiative that started here, and huge credit to Mark, is being talked about by international heads of state, and being recognised by them. So particularly, and we talked about, by the way, recognition of income generation in other parts of the corporation. Of course, Mark's been doing this for a couple of years, getting income in for partnership on events, and we should find a way to recognise that, Policy Chairman, I think, as well. And the understatement I noticed about the website as well, so that's very positive. Couple of questions from me. One about media monitoring, and just to understand where we are on that, and provide. We'll take all the questions. And also on the town hall, it's fantastic to hear about 1,000 people joining online. It would be I would be very interested to understand, was that just people that worked here, or was that across, Barbican Police? I want to make sure that people that work in all, who ladder up into all the city are being invited to those town halls, and encouraged indeed to interact and meet each other, which I think would be very helpful as part of that. Tim Hales first.
So let's do it in reverse. So I went and shamelessly plugged the merch at the HR Away Day that went down well with staff, I'm told, and there's a staff discount. But look, thank you, because the coverage that we had there on the internal side as well really made people feel engaged. And as most people know, I'm not sure everyone knows, we've done a sort of a soft launch around it. We haven't gone out large externally with press and so forth, but so far so good. On the digital review bit, yes, I think the challenge here, Mark, is that people will partner with it if they feel it's fit for purpose. And so I'll sort of do it in reverse compliment. So DITS ended up doing a very, very good job on the Mansion House website, but we started off in a very bad place where I was being asked to basically bolt onto something that was a load of rubbish, which is the corporation shop. I don't mind saying that publicly because that's my subjective opinion. But we ended up in a great place. So I think if you're going to get buy-in from people not doing their own thing everywhere, they've got to feel comfortable and confident that a good high quality product is being produced that they then engage in and partner with. LMS show, look, we had some really good outcomes here. I think it's early days in the sense that it's the first time that we had relaxed PERDA and allowed an incoming Lord Mayor to talk about stuff and say stuff, and that will continue for subject to election. Me next year, so we can actually do more than we've really been able to do in talking about and building the profile and the narrative around the story to the LMS. And then last on corporate affairs, I did ask what the Confident City, the Lady Mayor's new strategic communications campaign was of the Lady Mayor, and she didn't know anything about it either. So I know that's not out there and it's not a thing. But
and was included in error.
But just for members' benefit, that's a nothing, so not happening.
Yes, and which is why it wasn't in the updated agenda that was sent around. James, I know that you want to leave, so why don't you make your point and then I'll come to Deborah.
Thank you very much. It's largely for the benefit of officers and members present, and actually perhaps to suggest that we have a separate call or chat between yourself, myself, and the policy chair, because the Digital Services Commission, I'm delighted to hear Alderman Hales thank DITS for the work on the Lady Mayor's merch stuff, but we've got a bit of a split in the organisation between the management of the IT and the obtaining and then the use of it, and I'd like to get a bit more joined up. I've asked the director of DITS to work on this with the Chamberlain as the senior officer that he reports to. I thought I'd just flag it here because it's great to hear of all these initiatives, but we do need to be joined up between what Mark's talking about and what we're asking the DITS team to deliver, because we've never really had a clear governance structure around the website. So I just wanted to flag that up, but it'd be great to get some conversations going. Thank you.
It's a very good point, James. And of course, the Digital Review project is ultimately owned by PNR, but you're right that we do need to make sure that we're joined up. I'm all for breaking down silos. Deborah Oliver.
Yes, just again, congratulations, as others have said about the Lady Mayor show. I think the coverage was excellent, and congratulations to the chair too for his piece on ITV.
Yes, I'm sure both viewers enjoyed it.
Thank you. And but also congratulations on the increased LinkedIn profile and the use of LinkedIn. I've really noticed that's improved, and my two questions, the first one was linked to that, which was really about whether as members we are really able to make best use of things like LinkedIn and even issuing things to the media, I'm not sure that we're all on the same page in our ability to perhaps make best use of it, and also what we can and can't say to the external media. So that's just one point. The second question was really about Hampstead Heath. It's just because you can see the spikes for Hampstead Heath activity, and I just wondered if we knew it's kind of like timelines for getting it resolved, because clearly just having an awareness of when the issue is likely to be coming up again helps you schedule other activities. Thank you.
Let me, as a member of the Hampstead Heath Committee, just come in on that. So the committee is making sure that Open Spaces is working very closely with the Comms Department. We had a very full discussion on that at the last Hampstead Heath Committee meeting, and so that is being very closely monitored and watched. But Lisa might want to give more details in a second. Helen.
Yes, thanks. I mean, the first thing to say is that I think there's been a huge improvement in the way in which comms and media, etc., has been operating. So take the comments in that spirit. I think there are two things. The first thing is that there is still quite a lot of silo working or departmental silo working, and I think that does cause problems where they need not exist had we got it right. And the current example is the City of London called property store. The comms with residents was really pretty poor, and I'm not pointing the finger at your team because it wasn't handled in your team, but it's a bit of silo work that has just gone badly wrong, and we're going to have to do quite a bit of recovery there. It's the first thing, and the second point is that an example of really great comms was around the water outage in the Barbican. Dan Sanders did a fantastic job there at keeping people up to date, working with Thames Water, and that's a really good example of how it should work. And when it works well, it's just great. People felt assured and knew what was happening day by day. It was really excellent.
Great, thank you very much. Who wants to come back initially on that? On other things. Lisa, why don't you go first?
I'll cover off a few. So media monitoring, we have, you'll be pleased to hear, Chair, that we will be reviewing who we will be working with. And we have started that process because our contract ends at the beginning of March. So Kay and others in the team are leading that to review where we might go next. So that is very much actively underway. On the Town Clerk Live, yes, absolutely. All teams within the corporation are invited and definitely are represented. So I can assure you that this is, that the 1,000 is from across all of our teams and departments. We have a very active employee engagement network, which has around 40 colleagues from across the organisation on that. So they do a great job in helping to promote that as well within the various institutions. And I'll just take the, so on Lord Mayor's show, Lady Mayor's show, yes, completely agree. Alderman Hales, there's more we can do. I will be coming to the board on Friday with a update and what we learned from our wash up as a team. So yes, more and more, I think, for next year. So we just need to agree how that looks. And then on the Hampstead Heath, yes, just to reassure, we are in the process now. We're waiting for the report to come back from the consultants. There were almost 40,000 responses. So there is a lot to analyse, and we had some focus groups as well. So we're hoping to get a draft of that just before Christmas, and then we're working on the timeline. But in terms of, you're right to point out about the planning, we have a very kind of advanced planning process now where we look at all of this, and it is a bit like moving lots of deck chairs around to ensure that we have things in the right place and in the right timing. So that is all very much in hand.
Thank you. Christy, did you want to? No, or Mark?
It was just coming back on James Hummeridge's point around digital estate review. Do you want?
Can I? Thank you, Chair. Can I just take the 2 points both from Alderman Hales and Councillor Tunbridge? Firstly, Alderman Hales, completely appreciate on your point that one of the most important parts of this exercise will be to go out across the organisation and do a piece of work that either has never happened before or hasn't happened in an extraordinarily long time, and find out exactly what people need from our digital presence, both what those teams need and, more importantly, what the audiences need, and to actually have audience-driven communications. This will not be forcing people to align with what we have now, but about building something for the future which works for everyone. And this is the first part of our digital comms transformation journey. We have hired Kathy Druce as our first ever head of digital comms, who really is a world-class individual who I think that we can be very proud of having an organisation that is already bringing significant change. On the governance point, the director of DITS, Digital and IT Services, and his team have been very engaged with this process since the beginning. The governance of the project is outlined in paragraph 62. There is obviously a fine line in some cases between what is a digital service and what is digital communications or digital engagement. But by close working, we are able to define that. I'm very happy to take a meeting on any of this, but fundamentally, our audiences dictate what our needs are, and our job and the job of digital services is to underpin how we deliver that.
Great. Good. All right.
So yes, I agree there has been too much silo working, but just to reassure you, particularly around housing and children and community services, we're working much more closely together. I have instigated a new housing communications group, which brings in colleagues from that team, our team, and also others. So we are working hard to ensure that we are all working as one team.
Okay.
Just the question I had about whether there might be support for members.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So particularly on LinkedIn, I'm happy to take that away. I think Alderman Hales would have been there, but we did run a couple of sessions for the Alderman actually on LinkedIn. So that is absolutely something we could roll out to members. So happy to take that as an action. Yeah, and media, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Are we happy to adopt the report? Yeah. Yep. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Colonel Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Item 8 is the parliamentary update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Set out, but just remember to.
Yes. So I'm not going to say very much about it. The report is on the record there. Hopefully, members have seen it. We only refer to these bits of legislation going through the programme at the moment that we are actively reporting on, or we're engaging with. That doesn't. It's not meant to be a full readout of everything that's going on in Parliament at the moment. But this is the kind of key points we're dealing with. A couple of additional points just to raise. I mentioned in paragraph 19 about the APPG for financial markets and services. As it says there, the chair of the APPG, David Pinto Jaczynski, resigned when he became a parliamentary private secretary. But I'm pleased to say that in the meantime, actually, Sir Jeremy Hunt has now been elected the chair of that APPG, which I think is very good and will be excellent for increasing the profile and the work of that particular APPG. And then, of course, work on the markets bill continues, and we're now moving into the next phase of that, given the announcement of the most likely new site at Albert Dock for the markets. And the chair and I joined the chair in engaging with a group of MP, well, an MP actually the other day in relation to that, one MP. But we can, if you did want any further information, happy to have a brief discussion in private, but perhaps not in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No? Good. Thank you, John Clark.
Thank you. Item 9 is questions on matters relating to the work of the subcommittee.
There are none.
Item 10 is any other business, Chair.
No.
Item 11 is exclusion of the public, and members consent to exclude the public. If you'll bear with me.
Thank you very much to all members of the public who are listening to that very stimulating various updates.
Thank you. I can confirm that the meeting's actually being recorded. There's an issue with YouTube, so but we're now in public session. We'll make sure to end the recording just before I said that.
Right, good.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Item 12, so there are no non-public minutes as there was no non-public session at the last meeting. So item 12 is the risk appetite report on corporate risk 10.
I think this is